The Israeli military has said that Iran launched a missile with a cluster munition warhead at an unpopulated area first and then at a populated area in central Israel on Thursday. Now, this is the first report of cluster bombs being used in the current war. The missile attack scattered small bombs with the aim of increasing civilian casualties. The Israeli military and its Washington embassy has said that cluster bombs are now being used by Iran against Israel and is also targeting its important centers with these bombs. Now, cluster weapons are designed to disperse over large area and maximize the chances of harmful strikes. Israel has accused that Iran unlawfully fired deliberately at civilian population centers and sought to maximize the damage to civilians by using wide dispersal munitions. Now, Iran's mission to United Nations did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Israeli news reports quoted that Israeli military as saying that the missile's warhead split open at an altitude of about 4 miles, that is 7 kilometers, and released around 20 sub-ammunitions in radius of around 5 miles, that is 8 kilometers over central Israel. One of the small munitions struck at a home in central Israel's town of Azor, causing some damage. Times of Israel has in fact said that the military correspondent Emmanuel Fabian has reported this particular aspect of the cluster bombs being used in this area. Meanwhile, cluster bombs are controversial because they indiscriminately scatter sub-ammunitions, some of which can fail to explode and kill or injure long after the conflict ends. The Israeli military released a graphic as a public warning of the dangers of unexploded ordnance. Iran and Israel declined to join a 2008 international ban on the production, stockpiling and transfer and use of cluster bombs that have been signed by 111 countries and 12 other entities. Well, Israel has now in fact said that Iran is now unlawfully using cluster bombs on its population areas. Cluster bombs are said to be fired with the help of missiles. There have been reports coming in that in some of these populated areas, unexploded cluster bombs have been seen, and the Israelis have warned the citizenry there not to pick up or engage with these ammunition and to report to the military officers of their districts when they in fact find these bombs. Meanwhile, cluster ammunition is said to be something that has been restricted in use. 101 countries have in fact signed to stop the use of cluster bombs. Meanwhile, Iran and Israel are not signatories to that particular ban. These are the cluster bombs that have been put in by Iran and have been fired at Israel. Several of them have been reportedly found in population-thick areas, especially in the Azor region as well. There are reports coming in from the military sources as well as from journalists on the ground that these cluster bombs have found their way, and some of the unexploded ordnance still lies in the area. My colleague Neha in fact joins on this. Neha, we have the Israelis saying that cluster bombs are being used. It's been something that has been banned, or rather there's been restriction of its use with 111 countries signing against it, but both these countries are not signatories to it, and the dangers of this cluster bomb is that these unexploded ordnances will remain in these areas and probably pose a danger even later after the conflict ends.
Right, Verghese, we also need to understand what exactly has happened here. Israel has claimed that Iran recently fired a missile at Israel, and carrying basically a cluster bomb warhead. Now, that absolutely sounds serious. And, it marks a worrying escalation in the already tense situation. But we also need to understand what exactly are cluster bombs. I'm sure, you've so far already explained it for all our viewers. But just to put all of that in context, simply put, for all those who do not, in fact, have any idea about cluster bombs, these are basically weapons that do not explode in just one place. If I have to put it simply, they are, large containers dropped from aircraft or fired from the ground. And once they reach a certain altitude, they burst open midair, releasing dozens, sometimes hundreds of, these smaller bombs, which are also known as submunitions. And then these submunitions that, can sort of cover an area which is the size of, let's say, the football fields, multiple football fields. And what is really troubling is that, many do not sort of explode on impact. They remain on the ground, hidden sometimes for years and maybe for decades as well. And, that is why they are considered so dangerous, not just during a war, but in fact, long after after it is over, the threat continues to persist. Now, just imagine that, a child is picking one up, thinking of it as a toy, or a, farmer for that matter, hitting one unknowingly with a plow. These leftover explosives can, in fact, kill anyone randomly at any time. Now, if you have to come back to the incident, what has happened that on the 19th of June, Israel reported that a missile carrying cluster munitions landed in central Israel. And as per the IDF, the Israeli military, around 20 bomblets scattered over a 5-mile radius, and one of them actually hit a residential home in Azor. Luckily, no one was hurt, but, that was, in fact, a close call is what the IDF is saying. Now, in fact, Verghese, these are the details that we have with us as of now. And in fact, we will continue to track this very closely for all our viewers. I believe we're also very shortly will be joined by a defense expert who can, put it in further perspective, Verghese.
Well, thank you, Neha, for in fact joining us with all those details. As my colleague was in fact saying that the cluster bomb ammunition that is being used is now a matter of concern. When we look at the battlefield, when we use cluster bombs?
Jai Hind and good morning to you. And these cluster bombs, now it is supposed to be, banned munition, which is not supposed to be used as per the convention. But now we have seen the cluster bombs everywhere, especially in Ukraine-Russia war. It has started from there. Now, I have been told, and we are hearing that it has been used by Iran in Israel, in the central, somewhere in Tel Aviv central area. This is a restricted, and it is not supposed to be used at all. These are so dangerous that, after even firing, the bomblet remains there and remains very dangerous. It is an area weapon, which is actually not only devastating, it is an unhumane munition. That's why it is banned world over and with a convention. Now, it is getting into in dirty phase of the conflict, especially Iran and Israel conflict, which started on 13th June. Today is the 9th day. We have seen yesterday, how the Iran has targeted a hospital, which is a central hospital of Israel. Of course, Israel has been saying that, they are just targeting the military targets, and the evidences are there. And the facility which actually, make any armed forces, like nuclear facilities, they are targeting. So, dirty, game when you start playing in any conflict, the chances of escalations are there in a dirty way. And everyone has to understand, Iran has to understand that, Israel has got nuclear bombs, which he has not declared, undeclared. Everyone knows, the whole world knows. They should not be pushed to that extent that, it's the chances, the probability when someone thinking on those lines, because these bombs and it gets used in this area, provocation should not be because of use of something which is not supposed to be used, and it is against the human race itself. So I think, the time has come where the both sides should restrain in any civilian areas. And it is a dirty phase which we are seeing after the 9th day of
Is it also a
war.
sign of desperation now that cluster bombs are being used?
Absolutely. Who uses dirty bombs, uses a nuclear strike? Anyone is in desperation. If you are so weak, you know that you are going and you get desperate so that you start targeting the human being, which they have nothing to do with the conflict. The conflict between the two states is between the armed forces, and they decide the fate of any conflict. So if you start targeting and your main aim is to target, your civilian populations, then you are trying to. It is only done in desperation. When you are losing, you do not know how to go about it. You want to escalate it to that level that the whole world comes into it and try to stop it. Of course, this war must be stopped with all means, but not by the dirty means.